Good evening and thank you for joining us. We have seen American presidents quietly slipping into war zones before, but never quite like what we saw today. Americans waking up to news that President Biden had arrived in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv on an unannounced visit cloaked in secrecy. That included the president taking a 10-hour train ride across Ukraine, venturing into a country actively at war and where there is no sustained U.S. military presence. The risk underscored by the wail of an air raid siren as the president strolled outside with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The visit coming just before the first anniversary of the Russian invasion. Mr. Biden voicing unwavering support for Ukraine and vowing the U.S. would stand with the battered country for as long as it takes. Kristen Welker begins our coverage.
Tonight, President Biden arriving in Poland after his historic and highly secretive trip inside a war zone in Kyiv, side by side with Ukraine's President Zelenskyy.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. President. That is a huge moment of supporting of the Ukraine.
I thought it was critical that there not be any doubt, none whatsoever, about U.S. support for Ukraine.
A show of unity and defiance aimed at Russian President Vladimir Putin, days away from the one-year anniversary of Putin's invasion of Ukraine.
The Americans stand with you, and the world stands with you.
The momentous day starting with President Zelenskyy and the First Lady of Ukraine greeting Mr. Biden. Uniformed Ukrainian military officers lining the streets as the two presidents walked through the Ukrainian capital, locked down for security. Air raid sirens in the distance. Then this dramatic moment, laying a wreath at the wall of remembrance for fallen Ukrainian soldiers, punctuated by a moment of silence. The ceremony's making a powerful impact on Ukrainians. NBC's Erin McLaughlin is there.
All day, Ukrainians have been paying their respects at this wall of fallen Ukrainian soldiers. They tell me President Biden's visit shows them that the world sees their sacrifice.
We feel that world support us.
And tonight, we're learning more about the risky operation that was months in the making. President Biden giving the final sign-off on Friday and leaving in the pre-dawn hours Sunday. These newly released images showing him arriving in Kyiv after a 10-hour train trip across the Ukraine border. The Kremlin was notified hours in advance, and the visit comes as Ukraine, which relies on Western military aid, is pressing the U.S. for more. President Biden announcing another $500 million in military aid and making this pledge.
For as long as it takes, and that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President.
The U.S. has given Ukraine over $100 billion in aid so far. But the challenge for President Biden, our NBC News poll this month showing Americans are split on taxpayer money for Ukraine. 49% say Congress should provide more funding and weapons, and 47% say Congress should not. Republican House Speaker McCarthy says he's against a blank check for Ukraine. All as Russia has begun its major new offensive in the East.
And Kristen, the stakes remain high on this trip for the president with some key meetings there in Poland.
Lester, that's right. President Biden will meet with the president of Poland and other key allies in the region. And tomorrow night, he will deliver a major speech here where he's expected to build on the argument that Putin has committed crimes against humanity. Lester.
Kristen Welker starting us off. Thanks. Let's turn now to Richard Engel in eastern Ukraine. Richard, this surprise visit happening as Russia's massive offensive is underway where you are tonight.
And that's why this visit was so important, because of the timing, because Russia has launched a new offensive out here in the east, and because we are now at the one-year anniversary, or almost at the one-year anniversary of this war. Things could have turned out very differently. It seemed when Russia first invaded, having a massive military advantage, that Russia would win. And it could have been Vladimir Putin in that square today celebrating victory. Instead, it was President Biden. And Ukrainians are deeply appreciative that President Biden, that the United States, has been with them this whole time. And now they say the United States needs to stay with them and push for more weapons. And they want to see, as fast as possible, more weapons heading to this country so they can stop this offensive that Russia has launched. And this offensive does seem to be gaining more steam.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.